I'm very much the generation that served in Iraq and Afghanistan. I had the responsibility of their lives and their livelihoods. You have to make sure you have a humble approach to leadership to work with them. Business people move into leadership roles, but they haven't necessarily been prepared. Ikigai, which is the reason to live. I think when you unlock purpose, you can start to find a pathway to thriving. But if you don't know what it is you're aiming for, if you don't know what is important to you in the first place, then how can you possibly know how you're going to thrive?
Today's guest on the Energy Lab podcast is Damien Corcoran. Damien has forged a career as a professional leader. From starting as a British Army officer, then rising to C-suite leadership positions in the most reputable retail companies in the world, Damien continues his personal mission of servant leadership and higher purpose.
Is this time serving me? Is it serving my higher purpose? Because the best thing you can do to create more time is, so no matter how long you've got, people tend to fill that time with something. I think it's important sometimes to fill that time with nothing. As a leader, it is very important that you prioritize thinking about your thinking. You have the ability to focus on big problems, the ability to delegate, the ability to build great teams.
Now working with a tech company as an interim COO, he continues to create impact in the teams he leads and the partnership he creates. This lapsed skydiver, ultramarathon completing dad of 2 daughters, continues his leadership and mentoring practice from the Isle of Man. Welcome, Damien, to the Energy Lab podcast.
Hello, Damien. I'm very happy to have you at the Energy Lab podcast. Very excited to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. I'm really excited to be here and have a conversation.
Wonderful. So I have prepared a few questions for you, and I'm really looking forward to you sharing a bit of who you are, what you do, and how you help people on your way. And it's very interesting as well when we talk first time to know as well about your background. So you started your career in the military, and I would be very, very much into understanding how that impacted what you're doing now, what you teach about leadership, because I think the connection is, obvious, but at the same time, not always understandable for people that don't have the background. So how do you connect them, or what do you bring over? Tell me.
Yeah, sure. Well, I feel, in a way, looking back now, very, very lucky to have started my professional career as an army officer. And I got to attend the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, which seems to be one of the best leadership academies in the world. And you go there for a year and they teach you a huge amount about soldiering, but really about leadership. And then you get to put that to practice. And I'm very much the generation that served in Iraq and Afghanistan, and in my case, in Afghanistan. And when you're at Sandhurst, you're training to deploy with your soldiers. And the motto of Sandhurst is serve to lead. And it's very much about instilling in you a sense of servant leadership, because you are there to serve your soldiers. You're there to take care of them and to make sure that their needs are met so that they can do their jobs. And quite soon after I'd left the academy, I had the ability to deploy with my soldiers to Afghanistan. And as a very, very junior commander, my first real exposure to leadership, I had the responsibility of their lives and their livelihoods. And that's a big responsibility to have at a young age. So you have to learn a lot quickly. And one of the things I learned very quickly is that my soldiers were all highly trained experts. They knew their jobs inside out. They were very, very proficient. They were technically proficient and they were capable. And I also had the support of my senior non-commissioned officers. And these are men and women who are very experienced. And as a junior leader, you need to be able to leverage that experience. They have all the knowledge and the experience. And I realized I had little knowledge and little experience. So you have to make sure you have a humble approach to leadership, to work with them and to get the best out of them so that you can do the best job for your soldiers. And I think that the things that I really took away from it is that my responsibility was to take care of my soldiers. And in order to do that, I had to really understand empathy. I had to understand them as individuals and treat them as individuals. And I also had to make sure that in amongst a serious military environment, there was room for kindness and room for humor, because we were doing serious things, and we had to make sure that we made time to just see each other as human beings. And the way that I've been taking that on is I've always understood my responsibility as a leader. It is for people's lives and their livelihoods. But also how that I can help empower them to grow and develop their own careers, to help them find a path forward. And they're the sorts of things I've taken forward. So it's really servant leadership, leading experts, and understanding that everybody really needs to be treated with empathy and kindness and as an individual in order to get the best out of them.
Isn't it the essence somehow of leadership? Because many things about leaders are first, but at the end, it's this servant approach that really makes a leader a good leader. Otherwise, if a leader doesn't take care or doesn't put first the team, or in your case, it was so in the military it was a different scenario, but still, it is the essence at the end. So I think the connection is pure and evident. Thank you for that. And you mentioned as well.
I was just going to say that I think that what happens in lots of business, people move into leadership roles, but they haven't necessarily been prepared to do that role. So in many different businesses, you see people that are very good at their job and they get promoted. And then all of a sudden they have a team, but they haven't necessarily been given any help or assistance in how to now lead, how to go from being a successful individual to now having the responsibility of leading other capable people. And so lots of times that's a bit of a gap that you see within businesses, but that also means there's an opportunity there to add value to those people, to make them better leaders, to help them find their own style, and then to have a positive impact on the people they serve.
I experienced it myself. I worked 10 years in the automotive industry before switching my career, and I've seen it, and I know how much that can hurt a good team. Like when there's balance and then people were not prepared are put there, and then suddenly the balance is out of the place because there is no real preparation of exactly what you're saying. And it's very expensive because people start to leave, people are unhappy, people don't perform well, and so on. So I think that, I know what you're talking about. So I think that there is a lot to do there. So you already explained as well how you carry that in the leadership role, which is, I think, as well the key of what you're doing, right? So you were mentioning last time as well, it's about helping people thriving, or senior leaders thriving. And we often speak or use that word. Like I also do it with Marcus in our own coaching. But sometimes we miss the explanation, like the real explanation behind it. And probably that's not the same from person to person, right? What is thriving for you is not for me. But if you would describe it, how would that sound like? And what does it mean to build a thriving, or to help someone thriving and also have a life strategy to thrive? What is it for you exactly?
Well, I think as you introduced it, it is different for every person. And what I've found in the work I've done through mentoring and coaching many different leaders in different organizations and different industries is that people have to be able to find the framework that really works for them and is appropriate for them, because we are all different. We are all individuals. So one of the things I've been using more recently, which I discussed with a coach, mentor, friend, and former colleague of mine at Whole Foods Market, Andres. He's a great guy, and we used to talk a lot about the Japanese word ikigai, which is the reason to live. And I think that it poses some very, very simple questions that you can ask anybody at any stage of their life and their career, and it will just help unlock a bit of their purpose. And I think when you unlock purpose, you can start to find a pathway to thriving. But if you don't know what it is you're aiming for, if you don't know what is important to you, in the first place, then how can you possibly know how you're going to thrive? So ikigai, it really is made up of 4 things. What do you love? What are you good at? What does the world need? And what can you be paid for? And if you can find answers to those questions that overlap, then you can find your ikigai. And in my experience, many people have not asked themselves those questions. And what that means is that they have these pools of activity in their life, and they haven't worked out how to get them to overlap. And I would also say that this is imperfect. You know, I fail on this regularly. I realize that I'm not thriving because I'm out of balance. And I've seen that in myself, and I've seen it in other people. But I think if you can answer those questions of what do you love, what are you good at, what does the world need, and what can you be paid for, and if you have that as a focus, you can continue to work towards it. And that's ultimately the strategy in your life that you can create, which is looking at those 4 areas and thinking, well, how can I bring those together through the decisions I make, where I live, who I socialize with, how I treat my body, how I show up in my community. Because when you do get that, you're just going to get this feeling of thriving. And I think that if you deal with those component parts, you will just start to thrive, and then you'll realize you feel different. But if I go back, I think the challenge is people don't ask themselves that question. They don't provide their own framework, and if you can do that with people, and I love asking this question, you can start to unlock this, and then people can make different decisions, and they can make better decisions about what they're doing in their life, what they're letting in, what they're stopping, what they're doing more of, and how they're spending their time.
I could see myself in what you said, because I tried it, like the first times I tried 3 times, and I always gave up, like it was like stuck. Then I had a kind of management course, and some people explain what it is. Okay, I knew already, I have been trying already myself. But then talking to other people as well in the same environment, so people was expecting to know what it is. I was very surprised, as most of my colleagues, friends, people never heard about it. And I was like, really? So that's to your point, that many people haven't asked themselves the questions. And somehow we find ourselves in careers, in lives, in families, in whatever we're doing without being aligned with our purpose. Because of course we never asked the question. So how do you want to get there if you even don't know what is there, right? So I think this is very important.
But plenty of people compromise, and I think the other bit is also being a bit forgiving of yourself. So people are at different phases of their lives, and sometimes you can't just get it all to align perfectly. And I think it's okay if you're conscious of it, but without beating yourself up. There are just certain times in your life when things happen, and you are going to be a bit out of balance. And as long as you can acknowledge that and make peace with it, it's okay. But then there's plenty of other times where you are at the point of making a decision, and you can positively move towards your ikigai. And I think that they're the moments when it needs to be front of mind, when you can make a choice to get closer to what really sparks joy in you as a person.
And isn't it as well something that needs to be done cyclically, or periodically, to know? Because you just said it, everything is in change, so you need to kind of reassess. And sometimes it's not part of our culture. Probably in Japan, it's so important because it's really rooted in the culture of Japanese, and most Japanese know what it is, I guess. But to your point, I think it's there's no perfect way. It's not perfect. You need to be forgiving, but you also need to keep trying again and again, and in certain different phases, because it's going to look different probably. At least I imagine that for me. That's very, very, very strategic, I would say, almost to do, but at the same time, very basic, right? And another thing is
You're right, though. Yeah. If you have it as part of your routine, even if you were to look at it every quarter of a year, if you're reviewing the quarter of the year, and you will see those changes, I'd say it's okay to change because your phases of life are also changing. But like you said there, it is being conscious of it. It's just finding a tool that works for you. Ikigai is very simple. And then holding yourself to account and having those conversations with yourself and doing an assessment, doing a health check, a life health check of where am I against what I truly want.
Yeah. So, and taking the time to do it. So here that leads to my next questions that I want to ask you, because we mentioned last time we need to create the time, and you are helping people to expand their time. How do you do that? Tell us.
Oh, time is our most precious resource, and I think that if you aren't conscious of your time, you can waste it, you can squander it. So I think the first thing to do when you're trying to create more time is to become aware of your time. It's to look at your time. Where are you spending it? How many hours are you sleeping? Is that enough? Is it too much? How much time are you spending socializing, working? What are you doing within your day, and break it down? Because when you start critically looking at how you're spending your time and really asking questions of, is this time serving me? Is it serving my higher purpose? Is it serving my mission and goals? Or is it not? Then it helps you make decisions about what you do and what you don't do. And there's a process that you need to go through, because you've got to get to that question of, does this serve me? Do I want to do it, or does it not? Because the best thing you can do to create more time is analyze it and start cutting things out. Cut things out that you don't need to do. And sometimes you have to be ruthless, but you also have to be clear that you're cutting things out that you can or you should, rather than cutting things out that you have to do or things that you are responsible for. And it's another one of those exercises where, and I'm sure we all see it in our lives, things drift in. They just drift in, and meetings just get accepted, and you commit to things outside of your working hours that maybe you don't have to do, but maybe you feel obliged to because you haven't had the renegotiation with the other person that you maybe shouldn't be doing it. And again, I get to this because I have failed at this miserably. So so many of the lessons I learned is because I've tried things, or I've recognized in myself where I've got it wrong. And I remember going through a phase in my life where I just left the army, I just started a new job, we just had our first child, and I was spending way too much time at work. And I didn't realize how much. And I started measuring it. I got a little app, and I measured that I was spending in excess of 60 hours a week at work. And I was traveling, but it was only when I started measuring it that I could see that I had to make some changes. And because I measured it, I could change it, and I reduced the number of hours, but I improved my output. So I became more efficient because I knew I had to get the same amount of things done in less time. And it was that process of feeling like something was out of balance, taking some action to analyze it, and then using that information to change the way I work. So I'm a huge advocate of that. And because of that now, I say no to lots of things. I try and make sure that things don't creep in that don't really need my input. And I time box work. It's a superpower, but just putting in areas of your day so that you can get things done, time to focus, because it makes you more efficient, more effective. And then similarly, just looking at the time you spend outside of work. Are you spending the right time on the right thing? Your own fitness, your well-being, which ultimately is going to make you live longer, the right amount of time with your family at the right moment. So bring awareness and then make changes. That's broadly what I coach with other people.
Measuring, I think that's what most of us don't even consider, and probably exactly what all of us should do, because when you want to change something that you don't know, how is it and how much time is getting. Okay, that's quite convincing. I think that it's something that there's no shortcuts. I would say, like, there is no other way around. Because if you want to improve your life, you need to manage your time correctly, and also your energy. Right, time is the most precious resource we have, and I would say energy is there as well. Because what do you do with your time if you don't have energy? And what do you do with your great energy if you don't manage well your time? Then probably you will feel drained. So at the end, it's so connected. So time and energy. If you think about the practices that you use in your work or help people implementing? Which are the most effective or efficient practices that you would suggest people in order to have this impact? So we talk about time, and I just mentioned energy because they have this big impact in our lives. Are there any specific practices that you would like to mention, suggest?
Well, I think these things almost have to be done in a bit of a sequence. And a bit like you would maybe have a coach to help you hit a fitness target, you should engage with coaches or mentors to help you sort out time. Because you have to sort out time first. You have to create time, because when you create a time, then you can start putting in other practices that enable you to think differently. So go back and make time first. But when you've made time, the beauty is it gives you time to think about what you're thinking about. And the leaders that I work with, they're typically focused on higher purpose and mission. They want to have an impact doing something in the world. They want to change something. They want to make people's lives better. They want to find a better way of serving their community. So if you can make more time to think about what you're thinking about, that's great. And I'm a great advocate of meditating. I think if you can make the space to meditate consistently, that has huge benefits in terms of your mental well-being and your physical well-being. But I'd also say that you can incorporate that into something that works well physically, like going for long walks, going out into nature and just walking. It's what we're designed to do as humans. We are designed to move. We are designed to cover ground. We are designed to see color and feel temperature. And if we can incorporate just natural methods that our ancestors were familiar with and were immersed in, if we go back to that, it's a really healthy way of creating the space and time to think clearly. Because then when you've had those thoughts, then you can come back and take different actions. So create time, go out in nature, meditate, find a way of reconnecting with your thoughts, and then use that to take better actions.
Yeah, I think the link is the perfect match to the topic, what you do in terms of practice at a time, because this is the biggest excuse that most of us have. When I want to make a change and I know that I should improve the way I eat, take more time for movement, take time for myself to rejuvenate. And yeah, most of people don't have time, right? So at the end, it's really like you're trading your time for something else. So it depends on where are you putting your time and which is your priority. At the end of the day, I think if we sum it out, it's priority, probably the biggest topic, right? And that's exactly, agree. Tell me.
Well, I think that we do have time, but what you said there was perfect. It's about the prioritization of that time and how we're going to spend it. But I would also say that people tend to fill time. So no matter how long you've got, people tend to fill that time with something. I think it's important sometimes to fill that time with nothing. And I certainly live by this. I put time in my calendar to think. And I remember how uncomfortable it was for people that I work with, that I was booking myself in my calendar to think about things. But to create space to think is really important. And I think as a leader of others and a leader of yourself, it is very important that you prioritize thinking about your thinking. And the truth is that if you put that time in, you're going to be more efficient. You're going to be a better leader. You're going to be able to contribute more and better because you are spending more time thinking. It's just working out whether that feels normal or abnormal to you. How comfortable can you get with that? And then also the environment you're working in, does that feel abnormal to them? And do you need to educate your environment so that everybody benefits from the ability to think about their thinking?
And to the thinking, and I love that you are blocking time for thinking. I think I should start doing it. I've been thinking about it. I think I should start doing it. Yeah. To your point here, I was wondering as well, the mindset. We talk a lot about mindset, right? If you think like for having a healthier life, more success in your career, being a better leader, at the end of the day, the practices you have, the tools you find, the people you work with, whatever, it boils down often to our mindset, because it's really much more, important than motivation that comes and goes, or than any other thing. So there are certain mindset threads that we develop in order to be successful in whatever we put our minds and thoughts into. What are, in your opinion, those, or what do you see in the leaders you work with and the ones that really have more success, or what do you help them in terms of which mindset threads are the winning one, if we can define it like that?
Yeah, I've seen that it differs with different people that I've worked with, but some of the most successful people have a real ability to focus. A lot of that has to do with creating the time to focus, but to be able to focus on big problems and focus on them deeply. But I'd say it also goes with a couple of other traits that are important. And one of those is absolutely to be able to delegate. So to be able to take as much off their plate as they can. But the only way they can do that is if they have built really great teams of experts, people that are capable of doing things that they aren't, people that complement them, people that challenge them, and people that think differently. So if you've created a really great team of experts, then you can delegate with confidence. If you've shared with them a mission and a vision and they're behind that, then they're going to make some great decisions without you having to have consistent input. And that enables you to then focus even more on the deep work. And what I've seen is that people that do that, they really start this flywheel of activity where they just get to focus more and more on doing really great work. And what I would say, though, is that works either in a work environment or outside, because this could be focus on a problem you're trying to solve in your community, or a problem you're trying to solve with a local charity, or it could be a problem you're trying to solve to grow your company. So the traits are similar, even though you can apply them in many different circumstances.
Yeah, and that makes sense, because the circumstances or the traits many times are not static, right? There's a lot of movement around it and diversity. Thank you for that. There are definitely a lot more questions I would like to ask you, but I want to highlight one topic that you mentioned before, and it's purpose. You were mentioning that before. If you think about the relationship between personal purpose and business success, how do you see that? What's the kind of relationship that you've been noticing in your previous military career or in your current business one?
See, purpose is really important to humans. Generally, most of the people I come across, they want to understand why they're there. Why do they exist? What is the meaning of life? It can be a really big question. And what I also see, though, is that if people can find a purpose that transcends many aspects of their lives, they tend to be happier and more fulfilled, or potentially more driven as well to solve those problems and to achieve that purpose. And one of the things that I've seen that it can really unlock people is helping them understand the role they play in the lives of other people. And it is a great question of helping people understand their why. Many organizations I've worked with, there are people that work there because it's a job. It pays them money, and that might have been as deep as they got with their interaction with what they were doing. But if I use my time at Whole Foods Market, for example, we have people there who worked there because it was a job. But over time, they realized that they were serving a much higher purpose. They were helping to nourish people on the planet. They were, through their work, they were helping people make better nutritional decisions. They were moving them gently towards healthier lifestyles. And everybody that worked in that organization had a part to play. The parts they played were different, but they had a unifying purpose of nourishing people on the planet and really helping people make better nutritional decisions. So I think if, as a leader or even organizations, if you can help people understand the part they're playing in the bigger mission, the bigger impact that they're having, that's great. And and that becomes infectious, and people find other ways of living out their mission and their purpose, or they actually start to find their mission and their purpose. They start to find the things that they're good at, that they're concerned about, and they start to have more impact in their communities or their home lives. So I think in that sense, work and the ability we have to unlock people for greatness in work is huge. And that's why I'm a true believer that coaching and mentoring is really powerful, because we part of being a servant leader is we can really assist people finding purpose and finding meaning at different stages in life, doing whatever they're doing. Everybody is contributing to other humans on the planet.
I fully agree with what you said, and I think that this is again for different aspects of our life. When I start working with someone, coach someone for improving their nutrition, their lifestyle, their overall health, it starts as well with your why and the purpose behind it. Because and sometimes we use as well the 5 times ask yourself why, because many times it's not on the surface, it's hidden somewhere deeper, and we are not really aware many times of what is the real why. So and the moments where the hard moments, the challenging moments, in those moments, you will need a strong why to keep on going, right? When things are not going as you planned or you imagine, if you have a strong why, personally, it helps you be more resilient. And at the same time, within a company, to create exactly what you were mentioning, the environment where people have a common purpose. Of course, then each of the person needs to ask themselves. But if there is a common purpose, or if I'm aligned with the purpose of organization that I'm working with, then probably I will do a better job, or I would do a great job, instead of just having, the time or the money for the tasks that I need to do. So I think this point is something that I used to definitely ignore. I think until end of my 20s. I think like beginning 20 is the time where people start more to ask themselves, or mid 30, something like that. I don't know if I want to generalize. Probably more people or more Gen Z are asking themselves in their 20s, and that's great. But it doesn't matter when. The important is to really do the work, and then also, personal life, relationships, also romantic relationship, careers, fitness, everything aligns better because you have a center where everything is matching. So I think that's
Can I just spin this round, because I'm really interested in the work that you do at the Energy Lab, because a lot of the time I talk about and work with people in a corporate environment, people who are working, people who are growing their careers. But that's one aspect, because they also just need to be healthy, functioning human beings. So what do you think are the fundamental aspects behind that, between being a healthy, fully functioning human being through the work you've done?
Fundamentals that requires very few ones, because today we are used to hear, many information, many hacks here and there, many details, things you want to do to optimize. But if you go back to the fundamentals, to the human fundamentals, then basically we talk a lot, and we practice a lot of rest and rejuvenation topics. So we think about rest as a first pillar, and it's not only sleep. The conversation about sleep has been increasing. I don't know if you also noticed there is a lot more talk about sleep in terms of personal development, fitness. So sleep is one part, but rest is much more. So it's not only the quality and quantity how you sleep, it's also how much time are you taking for taking breaks, so taking rest during the day, and which habits you have in terms of sleep. So there are other levels like creative sleep, when you are in nature, in green sceneries, or at the beach, whatever. It really helps you to get that kind of creative rest that is really wonderful. Or social rest. Today we need rest from our devices. I mean, there's so many different levels. It cannot be only sleep. So rest is definitely the big pillar. So learn what works best for each of us. There is no one recipe that fits all, but finding the mix. For someone is meditation time, for someone else is a walk in the park, or for me, I love walking at the beach. Doesn't matter. Create the time to really have the time to rest. And the second one is, of course, the topic energy, nutrition. So that's the energy lab. It's all about experimenting. It's a lab because each of us needs to find his own way, right? So sometimes for certain phases of your life works something, then something else. So nutrition is definitely the second big pillar in terms of the energy you put in yourself, in your body. Otherwise, the output you get out, if the quality of your energy is not good, or the quantity, or many other variables, then you'll definitely notice it. So it's all about, of course, what you eat, but also how you eat and why you eat. I work with people that eat because they're stressed, because they don't sleep enough, because they have emotional problems. So it's more complex than just saying eat this and that, or this is healthy, this is unhealthy. It's much more complex, but definitely a big pillar. And movement. You said it before beautifully. I mean, we are made to move. We didn't evolve sitting our desk and doing everything static. No way. I think our brain would have been still as small but we evolved because we needed to do certain things, and we needed to functionally move in a certain way, and we lost it. So now we go to gyms to move. We do things because we said in our calendar we need to move. So in that case, is as well, there is no rule that matches all, but it's the first step is to ask ourselves what works best for me, and then as well find practices and move as much as possible, and mixing the cardio part. For you can be the walk, for someone else can be biking, doesn't matter, and as well some strength training to be then to I think more for longevity topics as well, but also to be strong and healthy, because physically and mentally it's everything connected. We tend to cluster things, right? We think, okay, I do this for my physical health, this for my mental health, but that's not the way we work. Basically, we are one, like we're a whole thing. So we cannot compartment like in the supermarket, you have the compartments of all things and say this is for. So the main point I think is connecting those three pillars, and as well find a way to connect better with ourselves, and this is linked to purpose. So I think that's as well key for continuous motivation, and as well for creating systems that work for each of us in a different way. So I think those are the main pillars that can keep us balanced in also in difficult times. What is it? What are your practices? Like, if I ask you, what do you do in order to take, when you take the time for thinking, and then you take time for you to be at your best energy, what do you do?
It's great to know what you do, because then you know when you're not doing it. One of the easiest things is that we have a dog, our family dog. So we do dog walks, and we live near the sea. So we get to walk next to the ocean. So we see the weather, we see the seasons. I find that works really well. What you were talking about, it reminded me of something that I'm very passionate about, which is going into the forest and forest bathing. There's nothing better than just reconnecting with nature that way. So I do that whenever I can. And another thing that you touched on there, which I'm a huge fan of, is micro recovery. And one of the things that I coach in is the ability to recalibrate. So before you start a meeting or after a meeting, just taking a minute or two to just do some breath work, to change your state before you go from one thing to the next in our busy lives. Just take a little bit of micro recovery, or even just moving meetings so that they only last 20 minutes rather than 30 minutes, or 50 minutes rather than an hour, just so you have a little bit of time in between. So I'm a big fan of micro recovery. And then from a nutrition perspective, I get this wrong all the time, but when I was training for my ultra marathon, I really had to focus on what I was fueling my body with. So I know the right thing to do, but I also know that I don't do the right thing all the time. But the way I try and find balance is through the use of intermittent fasting, and making sure that I stay hydrated. So I would say I'm imperfect. I know the right things, and I help other people and coach them with the right things, but I'm just a human, and I make mistakes, and I get it wrong, but I know I'm getting it wrong, and then I know I need to get it right. But that's why it's always good to make sure that you are staying in touch with your body, that you're measuring the right things, that you are checking up on anything that doesn't quite feel right, and really just listening to what it is you need from day to day, week to week, month to month.
Yeah, because when you listen, when you're a good listener, you also have the information. It's all inside. We look at in the outside world in podcasts and what we read and whatever we consume, but most of this wisdom is in us. So we need to listen to it. Wonderful. We linked so many different topics, and from leadership to things that, I don't know, I don't want to cluster them, but I would call them into personal development and well-being. And it's because it's all connected. Like if you need to, what you're doing, helping senior leaders to thrive, you cannot only talk about specific topics and then leave the rest, which is functional to getting they're getting to their goals and whatever they want to improve. And there is no perfect world. So we need to be flexible and be imperfect, because we cannot do things perfectly. Life is not perfect. So the more you are adaptable and flexible, and the better chances you have that you keep what is important. And those are really the fundamentals, as you said. It's not about all the things you do on top. One at a time, we need to do a podcast with the topic of the ultra marathon. Now I'm curious to know about your experience and what did it do with you as a person. But I think this time we don't have time for it. It would be, I guess, another interesting conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And I've really enjoyed the conversation. Great fan of the work that you're doing. And broadly, there are so many people that are trying to improve outcomes for humans in different ways. So I think it's great that we can collaborate like this.
Thank you. And thank you so much for everything you shared. There is one last thing. How can people connect with you?
Easiest way to connect with me is through LinkedIn. So linkedin.com/in/Damien Corcoran. You can find me there.
Yeah, we'll put the connection, the link in the description. Thank you so much, Damien. It was lovely talking to you, learning from you, go a bit deeper in some topics that we scratched on the surface last time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ketty.